So I'm hanging out with all my buddies, and I realized something. Think of the group of people you've known the longest in your life. Think of the group of friends that you've hung out with the most. Maybe you're all here tonight. And this is what I've realized. I had an epiphany, and here it is right here. There is one person in every group of friends that nobody fucking likes. You basically keep them there to hate their guts. When that person is not around the rest of your little base camp, your hobby is cutting that person down. Example, Karen is always a douchebag. Every group has a Karen, and she's always a bag of douche. And when she's not around, you just look at each other and go, God, Karen, she's such a douchebag. Until she walks up, and then you're like, hey, what's up, Karen? Karen, what's up, Karen? There's always that one person, and I'm looking out, and some of you guys are like, I disagree. Well, you're the person.
What is up, YouTube? Live via satellite here, and today we are talking Kingdom, manga chapter 538. Well, it seems like nobody likes our man Akakin, does it? Or at least from what we've seen of what Kanjo's clique thinks of him. He doesn't fit in, he's kind of a misfit. But I have to say, I kind of like this dude. I think he's a very interesting new character. Which brings me to the point about adding somebody new into the series. When you have someone new come into the series, it's almost like a birth. But you know what they say, when someone is born, another person dies, or when somebody else dies, another person's born, however you want to say it. Today, getting introduced to this new character, it feels like someone was born. But on the other end of the spectrum, what we saw at the end of the chapter makes me feel like someone else is about to die. And it's heavily implied that it could be our boy Heki. And that was a heavy bomb to drop on the Heki fandom. But I'll touch more on that at the end of the review. Right now, we have to dive into this awesome chapter of Kingdom. There's so much to discuss, so let's just jump right into the chapter. Alright, so the chapter starts out with Chigaryu, and he's actually looking at Ouhon and wondering why it's causing him to reminisce about the days when he followed Rin Sojo, who was one of the previous three Great Heavens who served along with Renpa. And he's thinking back to a time when Rin Sojo pretty much just threw out a plan that they had worked on the night before with their allies to use one that he had just thought of on the spot. And even though it's troublesome to his allies, he says that being able to achieve victory while having both friend and foe dance in your palms is what it means to be a great general. And even though it causes trouble for his allies, he doesn't care because it doesn't cause him any trouble at all. And we actually see one of Kaishibo's messengers actually comes pretty annoyed too. And this was a really good way to start the chapter off because this was interesting on a bunch of different levels because not only did we get a glimpse of how Rin Sojo was, but we also pretty much got to see everything that Moten said about being conceited and having a battle revolve around you. And when we actually saw Akko talk about throwing out his plans, it pretty much confirmed that Ouhon is making the same moves that a great general such as Rin Sojo would make, which in my eyes is pretty high praise. And I think Chigaryu actually answered his own question when he was asking to himself, Ouhon, just what are you? So back in the present, we see that Ouhon and his men are fighting. And then we actually get introduced to our new character, Akakin, who is a 1,000-man commander in the Akko army. And it looks like he's leading the attack on the left flank. And this guy is pretty crazy because, like, first off, I love his design. But at the same time, he comes out talking about killing these Zhao bastards, sending them to their ancestors, and then saying that our selfish little young lord wants to make this spot the most important clash of the second day, which seems like a little bit of a jab. But then on the other hand, talking about, but since he's going to be the head of the family, let's show him what we got and try to leave a good impression. So just from this guy's dialogue, you can kind of tell he's a little off. But to be honest, just seeing his eyes already made me think this guy was a little bit crazy. And I do know crazy when I see it.
This is the suicide vest. Oh my god, it's only got one.
So I guess it's kind of understandable why Kanjo and Kyoko in the next panels seem to be happy he's there, but not happy he's there at the same time. Then we see Binaji wonder to himself whether he should try to reinforce his flank, but soon realizes that Akko has no intentions of letting him leave. So with that decision out the way, he decides to go and accept Akko's challenge, and even claims that he will be removing Akko's head from his body. Over at Ouhon, we see that he's staring off in the distance. Even though things are clearly going in his favor, he still wants to be cautious about Chigaryu's next move, because he knows that whatever he does next will greatly impact the battlefield. Over at Chigaryu, the men are awaiting further orders. Even Gakui sent a messenger asking what's the next move. And we actually get a map of the current battlefield, and you can actually see that the Gyokuho unit was actually able to escape. And as the men clamor for orders, you see another soldier yell for them to be quiet, because Chigaryu is clearly old school. Even though Ouhon uses high-speed internet to make his plans, Chigaryu still uses dial-up.
You've got mail.
And just like that, Chigaryu's come up with a plan. And his plan is to basically use his numbers advantage. He wants to send a Gakui army to chase after the remainder of the Gyokuho unit, while at the same time turning his forces around to engage the 8,000 men that Akko had initially sent to reinforce Ouhon. But this was just a simple part of his plan. The interesting part of his plan is where he actually tells his men to pick out 1,000 cavalry and have them go over to engage Ouhon where he's at, because that is the one thing that he would hate to deal with right now. Over at Ouhon, a report comes in that they have 1,000 cavalry incoming fast. And Ouhon sees that Chigaryu was actually able to still send something while being able to maintain an advantageous position where he was at. Now he finds himself debating on what move he should actually make, because he knows he should engage his enemy cavalry, but if he were to pull his troops out, then that would be the end of the pincer attack. But if he does nothing, his troops will start dropping like flies. He even contemplates whether he should split his 700 men up even further, but just then we get a big commotion to his left, and we see that it's Akakin leading another group of cavalry. And we see Kanjo notices that Akakin only has 200 men, and he wonders, does he actually intend to take on that 1,000-man cavalry with just those 200? And Akakin lets them know that these hunting grounds belong to Ouhon, and that he is going to go intercept these 1,000 cavalry who dare to interfere with Ouhon's plans, and that he wants Ouhon to use this chance to deliver the Zhao a crippling blow, and to reap the honor that comes with it. He says, do that, and even your father will start smiling under that mask of his. All he asks is that Ouhon remember this debt, and that when a time comes for him to take the helm, that he repays this debt tenfold to him or his children. And then he charges off. And I really like this part, because while Ouhon was trying to think about how to solve this problem, Akakin was taking the initiative and giving Ouhon one less thing to worry about, which pretty much rendered Chigaryu's plan useless. So then we get Ouhon talking with Kanjo about, so that is the problem child Akakin. And he asks Kanjo what does he think about this sacrifice. And Kanjo says that due to his personality, Akakin has the eternal rank of 1,000-man commander, and he's probably the most wasted potential on the Akko army. Then Ouhon decides that he'll send in a 30-man unit to make sure that Akakin doesn't die before his unit gets wiped out. And then we get to see the fighting intensifying on all the fronts, and one of the soldiers says to Akko that it seems like the Zhao can no longer prevent this from happening. And after we get an overhead view of the Quin's momentum, we find ourselves back in Ryoyu. Here we see that Heki is very pleased about the results so far on the second day. So this doesn't appear to be his worried sweat face, this appears to be his I can't believe we're winning sweat face. And Heki says that all across the battlefield they seem to be launching more offenses than they did the day before, and that it seems like the mountain tribe has gotten used to the way the Kwangrong fight. And he also states that if this is the case, the mountain tribe's strength should only grow from here. Then we go over to Rozo, where we find out something pretty interesting, that the Kwangrong are pretty much holding back so that they can find out the strengths and weaknesses of their opponent. By doing this, they identify the strongest armies in the mountain tribe. At number 1, they have Baggio and his group. At number 2, they have the King of Figo and his men. And at number 3, they have the Mara tribe. But at the end of the day, they say the one that sticks out the most is Yotawa's personal army. And it seems like she's already taken out a couple of their heavy hitters, and they say that she is truly a woman worth killing. But Rozo lets them know not to even think about it, because she is his prey alone, because it's been a long time since someone got his blood and his loins disexcited. But then one of Rozo's men noticed that he hasn't seen Shinsuiju in a while, and Rozo lets him know that Shinsuiju left first thing in the morning, and that he seemed to be making his way for somewhere outside the battlefield. And we see Shinsuiju looking around, and he's actually looking at some forest areas, and he says that it seems that he was correct, and that it's time for them to return. And then we get some ominous narration saying the third day of Ryoyu would see a huge event occur whose aftermath would weigh heavily on the entire Queen forces. And its target was none other than the Heki army. And that was a chapter in a nutshell, guys, and this was another excellent chapter of Kingdom. Okay, so today I actually want to start with the end of the chapter because I think Hera's trying to add a little bit of suspense into the story by making you think that Heki's gonna die. But to be honest with you, I really don't think Heki's gonna die because I don't think Hera is the type of author who would telegraph it like this. And when you specifically read it, he says the target's the Heki army. And if you had to think about it from a military standpoint, the whole point of this battle in Ryoyu is to make sure that Sensuiji's army doesn't get to Gyo. And if you were going to try to carve a path to get to Gyo through the Quinn forces, where would it be easiest to start? To me, what I think Sensuiji wants to do is he wants to go through the Heki army because he knows that they're the weakest link on the battlefield right now. And then the fact that they talk about this event will weigh heavily on the entire Quinn forces. If the entire Quinn forces didn't seem to be that weighed down by Mako's death, I don't think they as an army would be that weighed down by Heki's death. I mean, we as readers have more of an attachment to Heki, but it's saying here the entire Quinn forces. So those couple things make me think that Heki should be safe. Another big question is, where are we at after this chapter? Are we still going to be on day 2 and seeing what happens in these other battlefields? Or did we see enough and we're moving straight to day 3? I really liked the part at the beginning with Rinshoujo. We got to see a young Shigaryu and Gyoun, but the thing that was most interesting to me was how he talked about holding both friend and foe in the palm of your hands, which immediately made me think of when Ouhon used Heki as bait. And it was just cool to see that Ouhon isn't the only person who was using those type of tactics. And the last thing I really wanted to discuss was Ouhon saving Akakin. And I think Ouhon wants to save this guy because he realizes he has talent, which I found pretty funny because this is something that we've seen Ouhon do from time to time. And it now seems pretty obvious that Ouhon has also inherited his father's eye for talent. And I think it won't be too long before we see Akakin join the Gyokuho unit. Which brings me to my next point, which makes me think that either Banyo or Akko is going to die. Because we did see that Shigaryu decided to send the Gakui army after the rest of the Gyokuho unit, and Banyo was already wounded. So I'm not sure if he'll be able to make it out of that type of situation. So maybe Akakin was introduced to be Banyo's future replacement. And then if Akakin is really going to join the Gyokuho unit, there's only a couple of ways that it could happen. Either Akko would have to die and he would be absorbed in, or maybe Ouhon could request that he join, or maybe even Akakin himself ask Akko's permission to join. But I do believe that the appearance of Akakin does mark the death for somebody. And we will just have to wait and see who it could possibly be. But anyway, guys, that was my review for this week. Let me know what you guys thought of the chapter in the comment section below. Leave a like if you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. Peace out.